Hello, namaste, and good afternoon, everyone. This is Manashwi, and on behalf of Foroptom iBids team, I would like to welcome you all to our iBids e-learning session organized by Foroptom. So, before we head on, a brief introduction about our program. The iBids e-learning session is an initiative by Foroptom, and it is an interactive program where we discuss optometric topics. And today we have Ms. Sakina Musaji, who is going to talk about pediatric history taking with us. So before we head, I'd like to give you all a brief introduction about our speaker today. Ms. Sakina has completed her bachelor's in clinical optometry from Bharati Vidyapeeth, deemed to be University School of Optometry, Pune, as well as fellowship in pediatric optometry from Shankara Netralaya, Chennai. She is currently working as consultant optometrist at Mombasa Eye Hospital, Mombasa, Kenya. So on behalf of Foroptom iBids team as well as our audience, I'd like to welcome you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Manashri, and thank you for that introduction. I would just like to correct that we were going to present for the pediatric history assessment, but we changed that to functional vision assessment in special children. So sorry for the inconvenience. We are not going to deal with the history today, but we'll just go through how the functional vision assessment in special children will be.
Okay, I apologize for the mistake, ma'am. So we're talking about functional vision assessment in special children. So before we head on, I would just like to give a small reminder to all of our audiences. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation. And if you have any questions, please type them out in the conversation box and we'll discuss them with ma'am later after the presentation is over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone, and for you it will be a very good afternoon to you all, because I can see most of you are Indians, and I think from other parts of the world as well. But for me it's good morning, so thank you all of you for joining in. Without ado, we'll start the session. So I'm going to talk about the functional vision assessment in special children, and for this presentation, I would like to take the opportunity and tell you that where I have actually got the information from. These are my references. There is a study by Meenakshi Swaminathan and et al. For the visual function assessment, ocular examination and intervention in children with developmental delay, a systemic approach, part 1. If you wish, you can all go through the study. And I would like to acknowledge Dr. Professor Moore, who had given a talk on the platform with OOLS, and his talk was on the practical clinical examination of young children and special needs children. So I have taken most of the points from his talk as well. I have given you the YouTube link for his session, so you can always go and visit the session and listen to it. So before we start this session, I would just like to have a brief on what our audience is like. So you can comment in the chat session, and I would like to know how often does the group which we are attending the talk assess special children. Are they for if you are seeing special children on regular basis, please type in 1. If you are seeing them weekly, please type in 2. Once in a while, type in 3. And if you never see any special children, please type in 4. Okay, so continuing the session, we have received a number of responses, and it's kind of a mixed one. So mostly people don't see special children on regular when they are assessing. Most of you, some of you see them in once a while, and a few of you see them regularly. Okay, good. So okay, so this is an overview of what we are going to be covering throughout this session. We will be seeing what functional vision assessment actually, what it means, what are the areas of the brain associated with functional vision assessment, history and general assessment, major areas for assessment, tests to be done, recording and scoring, and management plan. Okay. Moving on next, how would I define functional vision assessment? Is an evaluation of the day-to-day visual skills of an individual who is visually impaired but may or may not have any significant eye conditions. So together with this, let me tell you what special needs is. Special needs does not necessarily mean that the child should be mentally retarded or mentally disturbed or have mental disabilities. No, it can be any handicap which causes some visual disturbance in their eyes, and which cannot help them to do their normal day-to-day activities. Okay, so if we are talking about special children, please do not have a mental thought that they will have always have a mental uh, disability, but they can have any kind of handicap which is associated also with some visually impairment. Okay. Next, now to do carry out a functional vision assessment, these are the basic requirements which we need. Let's talk about the room requirements. Make sure that you have a very quiet room. It is out, or it is somewhere isolated from the normal OPD. Make sure that the temperature of the room is very good, not too cold, not too hot. Make sure that the child is comfortable with the temperature. And you can have a rheostat if you wish to have in your room to change the temperature accordingly. Also make sure that the room is has a good temperature in accordance to what the temperature is outside as well. Make sure that you have wheelchair accessibility in the room, because you are going to see special children. They can have any sort of handicap. They will be coming into your wheelchair, not like a normal child who will be walking into your room. So make sure that you have ramps or even lifts if you are on a higher floor, to make sure that the child can reach your clinic. Make sure that the room is less cluttered, because the child may have some crowding issues and cannot travel in very crowded situations. So make sure that the room is less cluttered. There is a very few furniture on in your room, just whatever is necessary. Make sure that your room is really big. It has space for the child to roam around and doesn't have a lot of things. Make sure that there is a subtle ambience. By this subtle ambience, I would mean that normally a normal child would love a lot of pictures in the room and lots of toys and all that, and colorful walls and all that. But for this child, they may be very a lot of images on the wall, a lot of bright colors can be very disturbing to these special children. So make sure that the walls have a very calm color. They should be plain, no pictures, no frames on the wall. A very few frames which shows your degree or something like that. If you want to put them, that doesn't matter, but they should not be very huge and not be very alarming to the child. So the ambience should be very subtle and very calm. Okay, as I've already talked about the space, let's make sure that the space is really huge, not very big and not very small. An appropriate space would be very good for the child, so that the child can move around. Let's even make sure that the wheelchair can move around in the room. It should not be very closed. Okay, talking about the clothing requirements, make sure that you are wearing a pattern-free clothing. Wear something with a solid color. If you are wearing a kurti, or if you are wearing a suit, or if you are wearing a shirt, make sure that the stripes are not there, or maybe some zigzags or some floral pattern. For men, if you are wearing shirts, make sure that they don't have like dotted shirts or check shirts or striped shirts. Try to make sure that you are wearing a solid shirt. But if you are doing both a normal OPD and a special children assessment clinic, you have it, and it's not possible for you to change your shirt or clothing every time, so we can just wear an apron on top and make sure that the apron is solid colored. If you are having any accessories, make sure that it is of high contrast accessories. For example, if you are wearing a bindi on your head, make sure it's huge and red. If you are wearing earrings, if suppose you are wearing a white kurti, make sure you have red earrings or yellow earrings, which are of high contrast to what you are wearing. Wearing high contrast accessories grabs the attention of the special children. Maybe they cannot see your face, but they with the accessories and the blank color, they can know that there is someone in front of me who is trying to help me. That way they can connect to you more easily. So one thing with these children is very important, apart from all the ocular examinations which we do in normal children, is external observations. Observation is very necessary. Please, I have made a typing error, so it's observations, external observations. So first we have to make an observations in the waiting area. Just have if you have a CCTV, check out your CCTV camera, or just have a walk outside in your waiting area. That how is the child behaving amongst new people, because they will be registering for a special clinic assessment, but they will be waiting with normal children as well. So just have a look on how they are reacting to new environments, how they are reacting to new people, how is their behavior in the waiting area amongst new people, amongst a crowd. So that will give you an example of what their mental status is. Second, observe how they are entering the examination room. Are they walking into your room? Do they need any aids? Is someone carrying them into the room? Are they coming on a wheelchair, or they have clutches? Just observe how they are entering the examination room. uh, are they able to enter on themselves? Are they hesitating to enter? All that you have to make an observation. Third, check on the mannerisms of the patient. Are they greeting you back when you greet them when they are coming in? Is there a social smile present when they are seeing someone new? Are they smiling, or are they intimidating on how you are presenting to them? Are they scared? Just observe how the mannerism of the patient is. Okay, check on the physical appearance of the child. Are they having any first observe the eyes. Are they having any funny looking eyes? Is there any squint present? Is there any nystagmus present? Look on the face. Is there any funny appearance on the face? The ears are short, or the face is small. That will give you an idea that the child has a microcephaly. Look at the stature of the child, and correlate it with the age. Is it short? Is it are they very huge? That will give you an idea of the syndrome, if the child is having Down syndrome, or if the child is having any Marfan syndromes. So check out their physical appearance on how they are presenting to you in the clinic. Moving on next, this is a very important part for all examinations which you do, even if we are doing a normal OPD. Or a special children assessment. The history part is very important for all our patients. So first, take in the demographic data. Write the name, the age, the gender of the child. The age is very important because the child may have developmental delay. The child will be have grown, like he's 10 years, but appears like he is still a 7-year child or 8-year child. So noting down the age is very important. Name and gender would just be of recording purposes. For gender, you can also rule out if some conditions are more female based, or some genetic conditions are more prone to have in male. So that will be very important for you. So for here, a different part in the history would be the main concerns of the parents. Ask the parent what the child requires, because this normally we would not ask in a normal history. Ask what the main concerns of the parent is. What are the visual complaints of the parent? How are that visual complaints related to daily activity related things the child is doing? So that is very important. You have to ask. A medical history you have to ask it. This is a compulsory that you have to ask in these kind of children, because these children have several other conditions as well, and they are going through a lot. Apart from a visual impairment, they have very many conditions, and they must have already visited a lot of many hospitals. They will be having records of MRI scans, they will be having CT scans, they will be having other medical reports, they will be having ear tested, echo tested, maybe if they have a foot condition, they have their foot x-rays and everything. The child, if has been visiting a physician, go through the report very slowly, and make sure you catch every diagnosis the child has been made. If the child is just make sure anywhere if it's written the child is having any syndromes, the diagnosis will be made before the child comes to you, because the child has many other problems apart from eye problems. The next very important part will be the birth history. The birth history is very important in these children. We have to know what type of delivery the child underwent. Did the child have any birth asphyxia? Did they cry immediately after birth? How if the child is having seizures, how many seizures are they having during after how much duration is the child having the seizures? When was the last seizures the child has? Is the child under medication for seizures? We have to mention everything. Ask about birth trauma. Ask the mother if she had any complications during her pregnancy. We have to ask about torch infections both in the mother and in the child, because many of the conditions are caused because of the torch infections. Next, moving on in the history, you have to ask about the developmental history. For normal children, the developmental history will be very normal, but you have to ask the developmental history, because these children have developmental delay. You have to ask about the motor development. When did they start crawling? When did they have neck balance? When did they start walking? When did this if they are of age, when did they start walking? So for this, it is very important that we also know the normal developmental milestones as well. Normally, when would the child have a neck balance? When would the child be having crawling time? So you have to know it. In the cognitive, you will be saying visual memory, how is the brain working. So for that, you have to even ask the developmental history. Next, this is the general assessment. We will be seeing one by one. I will be covering the vision, the contrast, visual fields, ocular motility and nystagmus, accommodation, and the overall eye health. So for vision assessment, it can be as normal as a normal child. If a child is coming into your clinic, how you would assess the vision, it would be very similar to it, but there are some other changes which will make. We have to do a fixation and following light checking for all the children irrespective of what age they are having, because we don't know what the visual status of the child is. We cannot just start up with a Cardiff acuity or an HOTV or normal Snellen chart in comparison to the age. Maybe this special child is 14 years of age but still does not have the perception of light. So we have to do a perception of light test, how the child is fixating to the light, how the child is following the light in every special child we are seeing. Next, we have to check how they are fixating on an object. Are they grabbing onto the object? Are they fixating well on the object? How are they moving towards the object? All that observations we have to make them. So for a special child, take an object, see how they are reacting to it. If they are not reacting to it, try to illuminate the object, give a more illuminance to the object. Are they now responding to this illuminated object? This is an extra thing which you would do. Try to use objects which can be illuminated. There are toys which can be self-illuminated, or you can just put a torch down the toy so that it reflects a lot of light. Then you observe how the child is reacting to the toy. For this, you have to make sure that you have to remember that the child is having a delayed response. So just don't show the toy and remove it immediately. keep it there for some time. Encourage the child to look at the toy. Let the child visually search for the toy. If they are responding, then remove the toy and bring it to another area. So don't just show the object and remove it. Remember that the child is having a delayed response. Then we can if the child is successfully giving good responses, we can move on to do the Lia paddles. Again, here make sure that you are giving appropriate time for the child to respond to the gratings. Just don't change them quickly if the child is not responding. If they are giving good responses, we can also use the Cardiff equity charts. We can use the Teller equity charts. We can use for near charts, we can use the Lia symbols and teach them how to do the matching, and we can do the assessment of near vision as well. So we can do for these children, because crowding is a problem, we can use single optotype as well to make sure. So single optotype can be for distance as well and as near as well. We can give them a matching card and do single optotype vision assessment as well. This will give us the best vision which the child is having. Moving on, next, contrast sensitivity is very important to assess in these children, because in normal conditions we are always coming along things which are in contrast, our bed to the floor or the chair to in contrast with the room. So the child in the daily activities has a lot of contrast activities, so we have to check that if the contrast sensitivity of the child is very good. For that, we have the hiding Heidi chart. For this, they are why do we use a hiding Heidi chart? Because it gives an emotion, a smiling face. It has been shown that a special child reacts to a face more faster than shapes. So it is good for them to grab attention to a face rather than any other object. Slowly, then the charts have different contrasts, and the percentage is written on the back of the card. So give good time for the child to respond. Do it, repeat it 1 to 2 3 times, and get the best contrast sensitivity that the child is having. Another chart which can be used is the Lia symbols. If the child is elder enough and you know that they responded well with the vision charts, then we can use the Lia contrast chart as well. Another important part of the assessment will be the visual fields. The child may have very restricted visual fields, or the amount of the field of attraction is very less in these children. So we have to assess the visual fields to know how what is the visual space, till when is the child reacting. So this is one test, a puppet face test, which was created by Dr. Lia. We have to the puppet face is like it usually is a small card which can be placed on the finger and the thumb. It can be changed easily from the finger to the thumb. The front part of the puppet has a smiling face, and the back part is made in such a way that when you turn it, it disappears to the child, and when you show the face, the child sees the face again. So you can twirl it from your finger to the thumb, and from appearance to disappearance, appearance to disappearance, and see how the child is responding to it. Okay, so this is one puppet face test you can do. Next is the Lia wand test. I have given a link of the video of how the test is been done in the next slide, so you can always go and see how the test is done. This is the Lia wand test. Ask the child to fixate on your nose, or give a very attractive toy so that the child is fixating on the toy, and then suddenly put the wand in their visual field. It's okay if the child is it's okay if the child is turning their head and seeing the light. It doesn't matter. So you will know that how the visual field is in the child using this Lia wands. Then you can always use attractive toys. One toy you can use for fixation, and the other toy will be coming from all directions of the visual fields. Okay, so this is the video link for the Lia wand test. You can always visit and see how the Lia wand test is done. So ocular motility and nystagmus is very important. For this, we have to make sure, we have to check if the child is having any abnormal head postures. Are they having any head tilts or face turns? Usually these head tilts and face turns may be because the child is trying to compensate for the nystagmus they have. So if they are having any face turns, we can give them prisms to correct the nystagmus, so that the face turn or the abnormal head posture can also be corrected. For ocular motility, you can normally use the broad edge test, or you can also use the broad X test, because in these children mostly the obliques can be affected. So you can use the broad X test in combination with the broad edge test to check for the oblique muscles as well. It is very important to know the saccades and pursuits in this child. So just carry out a normal saccades in pursuit in the child. You have to make sure that you are checking for head thrusts in these children, because they cannot understand that we have to keep our head steady and then just move our eyes. So just allow them to move their heads and check for how many head thrusts they are doing during the saccade and pursuit test. If you want a very relative data, then you ask the attender or the helper to hold the face of the child and make sure that the child's eyes are only moving. So you do the saccades and pursuit test. Allow any abnormal head posture for the saccade and pursuit test. Maybe that is how they are comfortable. Saccades and pursuits will be important because they may have reading issues, reading disabilities. So tracking can be a very huge problem for them. So just allow any abnormal head postures which are comfortable for them. We have to check for accommodation as well. Many accommodative problems can be assessed in these children, so that is why they cannot focus on a particular object. That is why they are having learning disabilities. So check for the accommodation. One accommodation test would be very important is the dynamic retinoscopy. Check out if the child is having any lead or lag. Mostly the child will be having a lag of accommodation, so we can give plus lenses as a mode of correction for these children. Even it doesn't matter if the child is hyperopic or myopic, you give some amount of plus for focusing ability of the child, so that the child can focus correctly to correct the lag of accommodation the child is having. Moving on, next I say that we will be seeing how the brain works with in considering to other areas of vision stream as well. So this is the Dutton tree of vision. We know the uh, visual pathway till the occipital lobes, till optical radiations, and then it goes to the brain. So but there is more to the visual streams. There are two visual pathways, sorry. There is more to the visual pathway. There is the ventral stream and the dorsal stream. These both streams are very important because they send signals to areas where the functional part of the child takes place. So if it goes through the ventral stream, there is a recognition of objects, there is recognition of shapes, there is recognition of words and letters. So if the child cannot recognize them, there is no use of a good vision. While the dorsal stream is ability to search. Like this ventral stream and dorsal stream will be the what and where. So ventral stream is what, and the dorsal stream is where the object is. So these are I have broken down each part of the brain and what they do. So we can always come back to this slide and then do our references. So the major areas of assessment in these children will be the four areas: communication skills, near vision related activities, orientation and mobility, and activities of their daily living. For under communication skills, we have to see how the child is reacting when we are talking to them. Are they looking at your face? Are they understanding what facial expression you are making? Are they imitating the same facial expression? When you are doing assessment, you say no, that is not the correct answer. So are they understanding the nod of head when you are saying no and you are moving your head from side to side? Are they understanding that this gesture means no? When you are nodding your head up to down, are they understanding that this expression means yes? Can they establish eye contact when they are communicating to you? Are they understanding the gesture of hands, hi, hello? Are they understanding how you have to shake their hands? So in communication skills, this is all what you will be uh, noting down. Next, in orientation and mobility, give the child a task that you have to find or go to a person or an object in the room. Place an object somewhere and tell them, okay, so and so, Mr. X, you have to go and find this ball inside the room. When you are giving this task, observe the child. Is the child scanning the entire room for the object or the person? Are they trying to navigate the room, that how will I reach that person? When they are moving, are they trying to avoid the obstacles? Now for here, you can purposely put obstacles, because in the first time I said that make sure that your room is less clustered, but you have to make sure that the for this assessment, make sure that you are putting obstacles, that are they avoiding the obstacles to reach that object? If they have to open a door, are they able to grasp the handle and open it? Then make sure that how they are getting onto an adult chair, are they having any difficulty? Do they need any help? So make sure how observe how they are sitting on a chair. Ask the parent for orientation and mobility. Ask the parent if the child is having any problems. If some children will be very fascinated with fast moving animals, with insects or anything, small objects. So ask them, do they do that? So if they are doing that, that that their vision is as small as that, they can detect small objects. And you can always use yoked prisms for if they are having motility problems. Moving on, next, the area of assessment would be the near vision related activities. You have to put a pile of toys and ask them to pick a certain toy. So just check how are they reaching to the toy. Are they searching with their hands, or are they seeing the object and then immediately picking it up? You have to check all that. Check for symbol matching. Are they understanding what you are telling you? Do they understand that we have the same to same of the concept? Do they know the same to same concept? So we can do the symbol matching with that. If we are asking them to collect an object which is near to them, is you place something in between them, are they drifting apart or trying to move across the obstacle to pick up the object? That is very important. You have to check also. Also for that, you have to check matching of shape of similar size. Can they do that this particular thing is of this particular size? Do they know their sizes? So that will give you the child's near vision related, that this one, the child can know that two objects are of the same size. Next, go for an reading near prints. What size do the child need to read very fluently, very continuously, with no tracking problems? What print size does the child need? For this, it can help you that you can now use this print size for all the activities the child will be doing at home. Moving on next to the activities of daily living. Ask the parent, how do they bath? Can they brush their teeth independently? Who combs their hair? How do they eat? How do they select clothes? Do they do all these daily activities independently, or they need some help? So these questions you can be asking the helper or the parent or whoever is assisting the child. Moving, I will just brief on what the tests to be done is. This is the LEA puzzle test. So I've given the link on how the child should be doing the test. The LEA puzzle test has both the colored part and the black and white part. So the colored part will give you a color cues and give you an idea of if the child is having any color vision deficiency. It will show us if the occipital lobe of the child is functioning. Okay, and we will know the child's orientation as well, because for the circle and the square the child will have no orientation problem, but for the house and the apple we can give them an inverted house and then tell them to fix it properly. So are they understanding the concept that the roof should be on the top and the floors should be on the bottom? So this will give the orientation skills of the child as well. And then we can use the relate the puzzles with picture child, so that the child has the idea that yes, real objects can be also depicted in a picture form. Then you can also use these puzzles to assess the near vision of the child. Give them even smaller targets of the picture, and then tell them where can you see the house, or pick up the puzzle piece and put it on the house. So this we can also assess the near vision of the child. With this, relating the objects to the from objects to picture, that will give us the idea if the temporal lobe of the child is functioning. Next, moving on, this is the Lia mailbox. Again, here we have the orientation. That what we have to instruct the child is that hold the card and make sure that you're putting it through the slit. So here the communication skills are, is this child understanding what instructions I am giving him? Orientation, if the slit is horizontal, are they putting the card horizontal as well? If the slit is vertical, are they changing the card to be vertical and then putting it in? So this will give you the orientation skills as well. Again checking for the parietal lobe for guided movement. That means from the hand to the Lia slit, the Lia mailbox slit, are they moving the cards slowly towards the slit? So it will give you the functioning of the parietal lobe. Next, this is the Lia squares, Lia squares. So this Lia squares come in different types of sizes and two different colors, black and white. Again, instruct the child what you have to do. Check for communication skills. uh, Check for the perception of length and height. Is the child understanding the bigger size, smaller size? It will give you the function of the parietal lobe again. uh, you can use these Lia squares for function for visual memory as well. Like if you are putting a black and white of a particular size and black and white of another particular size, then you ask the child to remake the sequence which you had made previously. So this will give you the idea of the functioning of the temporal lobe. Next, we can just create, these are very personalized things which you can make yourselves at home. Make sticks with emojis on them or facial expressions. Check how the child is reacting to these facial expressions. Okay, if the child is understanding that this face is crying or this face is happy, again you can use these sticks to give the concept of same. Ask the child that can you pick up the two faces which are same? So this will give you the functioning of the visual memory as well. You can place it in a sequence: smiley face, cool face with a crying face, and then pick it up and then tell the child to place it in the same sequence. So this will give you the sequential memory of the child. Next, we can do this sorting, visual memory and sorting. Object sorting: give a lots of toys and then ask the child to pick only red. Make observe how the child is picking up red objects from a crowded object area. Are they having any difficulty to pick up from a crowded color area to identify the red color? So ask them to do the object sorting. That will give you an idea on how the child is working in crowded objects. Next, ask the child to have handwriting and do their basic math sum. You will know the idea of how the brain is functioning to lots of complicated stuff. By handwriting, you will know the hand grip, how good the hand grip of the child is, giving you the idea of how the motor function is of the hands. Okay, next, this is a test in a different totally way where you can do. TVPS is where a test visual perception skills that test 7 different perceptions. The it includes visual memory, visual sequential memory, visual closure, very many types, 7 different types of visual perceptions it tests. So you can do this test in very elder children. If you know that they are understanding what they are saying, you can do this test as well. For the scoring, you can use a 1 to 5 score where 5 is where 1 is they don't use their functional vision at all, but are using other sensory cues, where 2 will be they use their function vision inconsistently. For sometimes they're using, then a lot many times they are not using it. For the third, if you are giving them a score of 3, then they are using their functional vision, but it takes them time and they need help. If you are giving them a score of 4, then they are using their functional vision well, but they need time. For here, they are not taking time, but they need help. Okay. And finally, if you are giving them a score of 5, that means they are using their functional vision very well without any time and really quickly. So in accordance to what activities you are giving them, you can give them a score from ranging from 1 to 5. Moving on finally to the management plan. In accordance to what you have assessed entirely, you can suggest supportive therapies. If you feel that the child is having still mobility problems, ask the parent to have physiotherapy. If the child is having any speech problems, ask them to go on the speech therapy. If the child is having object sorting problems or handwriting problems or concept problems of big and small, then the child can go for occupational therapies. So the supportive therapies that the child you can suggest the parents to go for. Again, you can have vision therapies. Vision therapies can include a lot many things, to improve the visual memory, to improve the visual sequential memory, to improve the crowding phenomena. You can give vision therapies according to what area the child is poor in. And then you can suggest special educators for the child. A one-to-one conversation with the child will be very important. Finally, in the end, I would like to acknowledge Shankar Netralaya, where I did my pediatric fellowship from, and that's where I have learned a lot about pediatric population and special children as well. I would like to acknowledge the 4Optum and iBeats team for giving such a great opportunity to present. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can always ask.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a great presentation indeed. And I'm sure, like me, that our audiences have also enjoyed your presentation. So
Thank
are
you.
we open for discussions now?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have a few questions in the conversation box. So the first question we have is, while wearing apron, what do we do if the kid panics? Because most of the kids, they have a certain fear of doctors and, health professionals wearing aprons.
Okay, for these children, please make sure that they are already visiting a lot of hospitals, and they are just not coming for an eye assessment. They are they mentally know that they have to attend the hospitals, so they are not very scared of the doctors because they already have undergone so much of the medical treatment already. So but apron would not only mean a medical apron. You can wear anything. You can wear a cooking apron as well, no problem. The concept of the apron is to make sure that the patterns of the shirt or your clothes is hidden. So you can even tie a scarf, a very plain scarf, or to hide the patterns. By apron, I didn't mean just a medical apron. So you could just do anything to make sure that your patterns are not disturbing the child.
Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Similarly, we have another question by Ms. Kriti. So if the patient has accommodative insufficiency, then can we prescribe AD or should we prescribe single vision?
No, okay. For these children, we can prescribe ads as well if they are having any accommodative insufficiency problems. So we have to give them ad. Now, normally these children have very few refractive errors or visual conditions as a matter of such, because so in some cases, when you see a such patient, you will be doing an entire normal eye examination and it will show you normal. The retinas will be normal, the refractive error won't be such alarming. So you will be scared. Now what should I do, because this child is not visually functioning well? You will be scared that what should I do, everything is normal. So at that time, a visual function assessment can be very helpful. If the child is having a very huge refractive error, then yes, we can give them a ad. But if the child is having no refractive error, we can just give plain plus lenses to plus single vision lens to give accommodative help to the child.
How do we know if the patients, these kids, have amblyopia or not?
Okay, very good question. For the amblyopia test, there are two tests which we can do for microtropias as well, which we do the four prism base out test. So this one we can do just objectively check the eye movement of the eye with a four prism base out and check if the eye is responding. For amblyopia, we can use a 10 to 12 prism base up. And just the entire procedure would be the same as a four prism base out, but here we can use a four prism base up or base down, doesn't matter. We are just seeing how the eye are moving. If you put a four prism base up, if a 10 to 12 prism base up or base down prism, the eye will move up in accordance to see the object, because the object will be shifting towards the apex. So considering how you are putting the base, observe the movement of the eye. If the eye is amblyopic, the eye will not move in the direction of the apex. So that will give an idea that the child is having amblyopia. If the child is having amblyopia, you can do a combination treatment where we are treating the amblyopia first, gaining the good vision, and then we are giving them the vision therapies to improve their functional vision assessment, functional vision. So first we have to treat them with everything. Before, we have to treat them for all the refractive error. We have to treat them if they are having any ocular problems. We have to treat them for any accommodative problems we are having. When they have got a good vision, then that is the time we have to do the vision functional assessment again, see how the functional vision is improving, and then you can decide on what therapies the child needs.
Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Similarly, the other question we have received is, if the child is not willing to communicate, then how do we do the subjective tests?
Okay, for these children you have to do a lot of improvisation, mostly do objective tests. If the child is not responding, base your diagnosis or base your treatment on all the objective tests you are doing. If you can do, if even if the child is very old enough, do objective tests for vision assessment using the Leah paddles or the Cardiff acuities. You can know the child's eye movement. You don't need the child to respond in that. If you know that the child cannot speak or is having speech problems, then just avoid using tests which have been done subjectively. For ocular motility, do the head turn test. Check hold the head and then turn it yourself to check for any ocular motility problems. And then the first mode of treatment would be to improve their communication skills. This one will be helpful with the special educators or a speech therapist. Once the child has attained good communication skills, then we can do the assessment again to see where we are lagging. Then we can give them again a vision therapy. So you have to take this step by step.
Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Similarly, we have another question. So, what are the best tricks to perform for the to do retinoscope in kids who are not, willing to cooperate?
Okay, so you can use autorefs here, or the handheld autorefs. Just get a gross idea of what they are doing. You can always get a very brief idea on what they are doing like with the Bruckner's test. You can get if you are having a myopic crest or a hyperopic crest, so you can get an idea of what the refractive error of the child is using the Bruckner's test as well in this child. So this child here doesn't have to do anything. Again, these children will need some sedation at times if they are not, because we have to check their the retina. So they may need assessment under anesthesia. During that time we can just do a quick retinoscopy, so we can get a very good idea of the refractive error of the child. And you have to create a rapport. For this, I have given given a presentation before on another platform. If you would like, I would put in the link of the, just give me a moment. I can put in the link of how pediatric examination can be done. I've given this talk. You can see how you can handle these children. I will just, in the end, I will put in the link into the chat box. So you can see how you can handle these kind of children. But to find the retinoscopy, you can always do handheld autograph. You can use the Bruckner's test. And when they are under sedation, you can do the retinoscopy really quick then.
Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Similarly, another question by Mr. Imran is what kind of tests has to be done for blue-yellow deficiency?
Okay, for these children, you don't need to go into a very detailed like what do we I would detail if they are having a red green deficiency or they are having a blue yellow deficiency. The Leah puzzles will give you a very good idea if the child is having any other color deficiency. At this time, you can put in a red filter and check if the child is improving on the Leah puzzle test. If they are not improving, you know that the red filter will usually improves vision in the color vision in children in people who are having red and green deficiency. In presence of a red filter, even if the child is not responding to the Leah puzzles, then we can suspect them having a blue yellow deficiency as well. But for these children, if a color deficiency is a problem, then we have to do modifications of their environment in basis of contrast. That is how we can help these children. So that is how we can know if the child is having any blue yellow deficiency.
Thank you, ma'am. So similarly, another question we've received is if the child has any visual contrast issues, then what are the solutions that we could provide, and how do we come to diagnose it?
Okay, for visual contrast, first we do the test which I mentioned, the hiding Heidi test or the Leah symbol test. If the contrast is really low, like they cannot even appreciate the dark, they will obviously appreciate the dark one, but then after the next one, if it's 50% of contrast, they cannot appreciate it. Then we have to make visual modifications to their schools or their teachers. Ask them to teach them in a black and white pattern, or like the blackboard should be black and then use white chalk. If they are using smart boards, tell them to use very bold black letters. Make sure their textbooks are in black and white. Make sure that their exercise books are in black and white and are having very bold objects. So that's where modifications we can make in contrast to what in accordance to what their contrast sensitivity is. We can also make modifications in their living environment. It will be actually very similar to what modifications we make with low vision patients. In patients with which have a very low contrast, in low vision patients, what modifications we make, they will be very similar to it.
Similarly, how do we come to find out if the child has high or low astigmatism?
That would all look high and low astigmatism you can do with keratometry. So we have handheld keratometries. You can find out the status of the the cornea then, so you can know if the child is having any astigmatism. Again, just if you are when you are just checking the glow of the patient, when you are not doing retinoscopy, when you are just checking the glow, you will be seeing a scissoring movement if the child is having a high astigmatism. For for low astigmatism, like minus 0.75 and minus 0.5, that would not matter, because the visual concern of this child is to do better in their daily day-to-day activities, not to have a 6 to 6 vision. Please remember that these children are special children and they are having problems carrying out their day-to-day activities, so they don't require a 6 to 6 vision. Even if they have a 6 to 12 vision, they will be very good with it to carry out their own normal daily day-to-day activities. So low astigmatism, if the child has, it doesn't matter if you give them a minus 0.5 or minus 0.75. Clarity is not what these children are seeking for, but it is just vision which they are seeking for, so that they have a good visual functioning and they can carry out the day-to-day activities. So to know if the child is having high to low astigmatism, you can use a keratometer, you can use a topographer if you have a handheld one, you can use the Again, the retinoscopic reflex, if you are seeing the scissoring movement, you can just get a gross idea on the astigmatism.
Okay, thank you for the answer, ma'am. So similarly, we are doing subjective as well as objective tests for these special kids, right?
Yes,
So for the
mostly
patient, I'm sorry.
we will be mostly doing objectives, because
Okay.
these children can be having any speech problems or any uh, character problems, like how they are responding cannot be relied on, so mostly objective tests.
Okay, so will these objective tests be sufficient to rule out any issues?
Yes, a lot of many issues can be actually found out with objective tests as well. Where we would need a subjective response is maybe in the saccades and pursuit test, because we want to see how the child is moving from one target to the other. So I've already answered this. We have to do the objective tests first. Check out what the vision is. See how the visual response is. Even for the visual fields, you can do a objective test. Just put an object into the visual field, the child will immediately look towards the object. That is how you will know. You don't have to tell the child where is the object, where is the object, where. Just if you like pop up an object in a visual field, it is human nature, or it is just instincts, that the child will turn their face towards the object. So you can get a very gross idea on what the visual space the child is having, what the visual field is, what the contrast is. With the information you have, give them therapy to improve on where they are poor. Once they have improved, call the child back again, do the assessment again, see where they have improved, see where they are lacking, give them another set of therapies where they can do their improvements again, and finally call them again. This assessment cannot be done in one sitting. You have to call them for several sittings. You have to make sure that this is not a one time visit. You have to do it several times to make sure how the progress is and how the child is improving.
Thank you for the answers, ma'am. And we're all wrapped up with our questions for now. So, on behalf of
Thank you.
IBIDS for Optom and our audience, we would like to thank you very much for giving us your valuable time and sharing with us this lovely presentation and imparting the knowledge that you have to us. So, we would just like to request you to share a few words about your experience in IBIDS today.
Okay, thank you very much for that, for the session, first of all. Uh, Okay, I had been going through the IBID sessions several times. I have been taking your quizzes as well, and I found it really good. I like what initiative you people have taken in this pandemic to share knowledge across all the students as well. I think you're doing a really great job.
So much for your kind words, ma'am, and it was a lovely experience having you here. So this brings us to the end of our session today. I would also like to thank our lovely audience for being so supportive, kind, attentive, as well as interactive with us. And on that note, I would like to end this meeting. This session will be on YouTube soon, and stay tuned for more sessions, programs, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact for Optom IBIDS. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.